Hi, and welcome to this episode of Sourcing the Truth. Hi, Belinda. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thanks for coming on. We haven't done one of these in a while, and we're coming with a new spin. A lot of new people that I've met recently, a lot of good stories, but also really giving back and sharing some stories and sharing some insights and learnings that you do constantly. You don't need much of an introduction into the industry. The first time we ever spoke was on your podcast, The Tech Savvy Recruiter. So no better person to get on for Sourcing the Truth 2.0.
Thanks for inviting me, Sean. It's lovely to sit down and have a chat with you, and let's see what value we can create here. So after a sort of a 20-year in career in running and starting and running my own couple of businesses that I sold, I then kind of thought, well, where's my value now? And when enough people tell you that you should be a coach, you kind of go, all right, well, maybe I'll do that. So 8 years ago, I launched Recruitment Garage with a view of helping recruitment founders who were getting to that point where they were great recruiters, but they were now stuck in that whole growth phase and scaling and all these new challenges that come in and face them. And I was like, I reckon I can give some value there because I've been all through that, been through the mire. And so I started Recruitment Garage and now run a product called this, or a program called the Scale Project, which is really about working very tightly with people, very closely within a group format, but lots of one-to-one as well to help them scale and grow their businesses, but that's very bespoke. And then we have the Growth Club, which is a community for founders who can just get together. I do a training every week. We have a Q&As as well where people can just learn and be part of that collective wisdom, which is really nice. So they're my main, and of course I've got the Tech Savvy Recruiter podcast with Andrew Roger, which I love to do. But the whole frame of it all is I love small business and I love recruitment, but I actually love small business more than recruitment. Like the challenges that people come up with, and, brave people start businesses and they start them with the right intentions, but sometimes we fall over along the way and we're not sure what to do. And I think looking to people who've been there before can offer a lot of value. So that's kind of the ethos, I guess, behind what I created, and what I'm trying to do is just help people get to those goals that they're trying to, feed their family, pay their mortgages, and have some fun along the way. So that's what I do.
Brilliant. There's been definitely an influx of people starting and going out on their own and starting recruitment agencies. Have you noticed that? I'm sure you're busy with all this.
I
And
do.
what's the first bit of advice you give to them?
Be patient and be consistent, and look to those who have gone before you to get advice from. Everybody and their mother is going to give you advice. Some will be good, some will be bad. Chase your dream, but speak to people not who are at your same level as well, but people who've gone before you and have made the mistakes. Because the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. And when you set up, and I did this, I'd been recruiting for a few years and I went, I got this, I'm going to build the next, global thing. And you get hit hard pretty quickly with what you don't know. And it's not knowing about recruitment. You've got that bit, and in the beginning it's pretty easy, but then sort of 6 months in or so, you start to get to this point where you start to get all these other things that you need to know that you increasingly don't know, and you get stuck. So starting out, I would be speaking to people down the track to say, what do I need to look out for? What do I need to prepare for? And cash is king. So don't get too caught up on the having to have everything perfect and the website perfect and everything in the beginning. That'll come. Get money in your bank, get your cash flow started, go to those people that you know will back you and support you, and hang around with like-minded peers and people that are going to support you dream, knock you backwards in any way.
Yeah, you said something there I agree completely with is I think speaking to a lot of people that are going out on their own, and the website's an elusive website that people can go and spend thousands on, and it takes so much time. But really, when you're at that starting point, it's about getting like conversations going, isn't it? And starting
Yeah.
going to be you, going out and talking to people and building these
Yeah.
relationships.
Websites? Sorry, Sean.
No, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say websites are important, but people place far more importance on websites at the wrong time in their business. When you're starting out, just get something up that works, that tells people where you are and what you do and that kind of stuff. You have to have something, but you don't, you can do that now on AI. You can almost do it yourself by typing it into something like Replit. It'll help you build one yourself, but you don't want to get too caught up in that, because the return on investment from a website is going to be way lower than you getting on the phone and speaking to people you used to work with and getting some jobs on and some money in the door. And the website can, evolve over time. And the thing is with a website too, when people do spend lots of money, often they spend the money on the website in the wrong way. You want to set your website up so it becomes part of your sales funnel. Yes, it's a brochure, it tells people who you are, it's great for your branding, and we absolutely all need it to do that. But the mistake people make is they forget to build their websites in such a way that it's pulling people through and it's connecting people, it's getting them into your email, on your database, on the phone with you. And that's a more complicated build to a point, and it's something that you're not ready for on day one usually, unless you've got some major backing and you're doing things differently. But most recruitment founders bootstrap it. That
Yeah.
99% I'd say bootstrap, and they probably start a bit too early because they're so keen to get going, and then they kind of go, oh, now I need the money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you mentioned it there as well. Like there's all these other things that, it's not just recruitment you're doing, you're a business owner. So all the ASIC stuff, the registration, accounting, the legal, everything comes into it. And then you find that you've got just not a lot of time actually doing recruitment anymore. So you've got all these other tasks. Is there a point where you see people going, hands up, I'm stuck? And what tends to
Yeah.
push them over the edge there?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because when people start businesses and even further in, they don't realize when you're sitting in an agency, you've got all this support around you, and probably two-thirds of what you need to do in a week is handled by the system that's running you, and you're just doing so that you frees you up to do the recruitment. So I think the point that people get stuck is when they realize that they're the operating machine as well, and they're trying to get, like, they might have been a 400K biller in an agency, and then maybe they've done it in the early days, but as soon as then when you start to get to a point where you're starting to look at new tech and build a new website and do some of these things that we talked about, you suddenly realize all these things take time and money, and time is a big one because you were doing all the recruiting if you're a solo operator at this point. And then they suddenly realize, I don't know what I don't know. You spend all this time doing demos and trying to do your marketing and figure out everything else that you weren't doing in your past job. So what you're an expert at, you're now doing for about, a third to half the time. And the rest of your time is taken up on, and there is so much, like there's lots and lots of just little things, those things that come into your day. That's the point. So typically I find people hit that mark about 6 months, because in the beginning it's all really exciting. You get up and running and you're invincible. I am guilty of that as well. And then you kind of get a slap in the face somewhere between 6 months and 12 months, that you're not quite as smart as what you were, and you might need to pull your head in a bit and do, learn some stuff about running a business, becoming the CEO. Even if you're just a one person operator, it still happens. Well, the only time it doesn't happen is if you're somebody who is going along and you're happy to stay where you are, then this doesn't impact as much. But most people want to do better, grow in some way, or even if they are solopreneurs, they might just want to work 20 hours a week. So you still need, ironically, scale in that perspective. Long-winded answer to say roughly about six to 12 months.
Yeah. And I've been guilty of it myself, and I speak to a lot of people that are, have maybe set up 6 months in and things are going well, and now it's like, right now I need to hire, and that can go different ways. Is there any advice you would give to people? Like, is there a timing thing? Is it runway in the bank? What would you be saying to someone that's maybe doing well and thinks that there's time to hire now?
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's such a good question. Most people hire too early. And it depends what you're hiring, but let's just assume it's a consultant or, somebody else who's like, I'm not talking about admin or delegation people. They normally hire them too late, and they hire consultants too early. The reason I say that is because if you're still trying to get your operational system and your processes and everything working smoothly for you, and that's not there, and you're busy, and you think, oh, I'm busy, if I get another consultant on board I'll be less busy, couldn't be further from the truth. What will happen is you'll hire somebody, you'll bring them into a system that's not working optimally. And we all know that recruiters are getting headhunted left, right, and center. Won't be too long before they probably get annoyed and leave, because they want to come in and be able to bill and do well and, go on that journey with you. So if they come into a frantic mess, there's always the outliers. Sometimes people do like that chaos, but as a whole, you need to have your systems, your process, and your cash flow runway going up, and be ready to bring somebody into a system where they can perform. Now, it's not really a certain time frame for that. It's more a functional thing whereby If you feel like somebody could come in to your system, you could go away for a few, sorry, into your system, into your business, you could go away for a few days and they'd be okay. They'd be able to find everything, do everything, they'd have everything that they needed. That's probably a good indication. And yes, of course, you need to have the money in the bank. And the sad thing is that I don't know really what the stats are now, but they used to be about 1 in 3 recruiters would join you. They wouldn't work out or they'd leave within 2 years. So you need to, it's the only place I tell founders in the big, like, be really pessimistic about. Assume this person's going to come in and then not work out. And you hope that they do. But if you kind of went, oh, if they left in 3 months and their billings were X, Y, and Z and I couldn't cope with that, then you're not at the right place. But what they should be thinking about doing before that is freeing up their time with outsourced resources and get rid of their admin and those type of things that they don't need to be doing, so that they can actually build a system to bring in the right person. Does that answer your question?
Yes, exactly. I
Yeah.
like that. I like what you're saying there. It's kind of having the systems and everything in place as well. We were talking about chaos there, and the worst case scenario, which I think is a really good way to look at it, because then you're preparing for that, and when everything's going well and there's work coming in, and you're kind of riding that like that high, and everybody, oh, this is going to work out. We'll hire more and more people, and then next thing you're in a bit of a spot of bother. One of the things that I read in one of your newsletters was talking about like control and like founders loving control. How do you actually get people to let go of that? Is it systems? Is
With a
what?
brick, with a big brick. It's tough because people, they think that they're saving money by doing everything themselves, but there's a ton of research out there showing that entrepreneurs who outsource the stuff that they don't need to be doing in the beginning are profitable way earlier. People like to hang on to it. No one can do it as well as me. We've all been there. And that's, as entrepreneurs and founders, we are usually control freaks as well. So I always recommend that people just start small, just build the muscle. Look at the things that you really don't like doing, the easy things that you don't like doing, and just start there. I mean, the place I started years ago was basically bookkeeping. I mean, I hate doing accounts, all that sort of stuff. So that was, for me, that was the first thing that went. But look at the small things that you can do that you're not so worried about. You're not going to go and outsource, delegate some sort of big important function. Like, here we go, go in and, I don't know, go and speak to my top 10 clients and see what you can get out of them. You're not going to do that on day one, but you might say, hey, can you actually go through and create a list of our top clients and see how long, what money's coming from them, and, do some sort of background research, like all those sorts of things that you might find yourself doing that you really don't need to be doing, that are either, and a good place to look is, you don't want to, as a founder, you don't want to be doing $10 an hour work. You want to be doing $200 an hour work. So look at all the stuff that you're doing that's either under what you want to be paid, it's not, or it's outside your skill set, and that's a place to start looking. And as I said just at the beginning there, just build the muscle, just start. And of course, the obvious places are sort of VAs and increasingly so tech. You've got they're the sort of two obvious places that you would go to delegate. But if you decide to bring, we had the consultant conversation, if you decide to bring in a sourcer, for example, often somebody like that can take some of the things off your plate as well that might sort of cross over that admin recruiting function. So look for places that you, well, that's it really. Look for places that are outside your skill set and below your pay grade, and just do a little bit. And like I promise you, once you do this, there's no going back, like, ever.
It's life changing. One of the things I did, and I should do it again at the start of setting up Cloud Recruit, was I looked at my day and I was recording what I was doing every 10 minutes. And then you're going, right, well, I spent 2 hours doing some admin here that I really don't need to be doing. And what's that ROI? Like, if you look at your time over the last month and break that down into hours, when you start looking at it like that way, you start to look at technology or VAs. One of the really big takeaways from what you've been saying here is, like, and it sounds like it's one of the most common pitfalls, hiring consultants before maybe your support staff. And I want to like re-echo that to be, is this one of the main things that you see people coming into as they start? Is that one of the most common pitfalls? Is there any others that you see constantly?
Yeah. So another pitfall is just not getting the systems done, because I don't know about you, but I'm not naturally good with systems, and it seems ironic that I'm teaching it. But the reason I can teach it is because I think, coming from the place where I'm not naturally good at it, I've had to build frameworks and things to help me be good at it. If you're really good with systems, then you just kind of do it naturally. But most recruiters that almost founders that I come across, because I don't work with consultants, I work with founders, but most of the people that I come across aren't good with systems. Very few are. And I think that's where people get let down, because they have a lot of stuff in their head. They know what they're doing and they just do it on the fly. But in the end, it lets them down because it makes it very hard to hire. And no one starts a business to work 24/7, 7 days a week, but so many founders end up working. Like, the dream is, I'm going to go and work for myself, earn some good money, and have a lot of time with my family and friends and kids. What ends up happening is they come in, they're burnt out, they're tired, they start hating recruitment, because and it's not because they're bad at recruitment, they're amazing recruiters. It's just because they're not building the systems to help them either, scale and grow, or work effectively. That is, and when I say systems, Sean, I'm talking about everything from back end, your Xero, your back off, your invoicing, that sort of stuff, through to marketing. Everything that happens more than once needs a system, and it may be a really simple. It might just be a checklist, through to it might be your whole database and the way your whole automation is set up in there. And when that's done, that's when people will come into your organization and they'll fly. So that's by far, and the shiny object syndrome is a bit to blame there as well, because people will change systems because they keep finding new stuff that they want to try before they've really dug in and dealt with what they've already got in front of them.
You mentioned the database there. Is that something that you see underutilized, or what's your kind of take on the database today?
I tell you, isn't it, like, the database is the big sort of elephant in the room in recruitment that no one wants to go near. I think I probably speak to like one person out of 10 database. But the reality is, if you jump straight to places like LinkedIn, everybody else has that same database. Your database is unique to you. And if it's a mess, we need to clean it up and use it. But I think people shy away from it because it always feels like it's this onerous, out of date thing that you just can't find what you want. And I was as guilty as anybody. I do an exercise. I did it the other day. I was doing a coaching session, and I say to people, okay, well, how many candidates have you got on your database? And they might say, oh, 5 people. Okay, cool. How often do your candidates move jobs? Every couple of years? All right, that's good. So 24 months they move. All right, so if you've got 5,000 candidates and they're moving every 24 months, that means that you've got 208, I remember the numbers because I just did it. You've got 208 candidates in your database who've changed job, who are changing job every month. How many of those do you know about? And they'll go, 10. And so if you can just get 1% more of those people, so just 2, that's an extra $30,000 a month at $15K a placement. But what they're doing with their database is they're talking to them either when they're looking for a candidate, or it's every 6 months, or it's just very randomly and ad hoc. And all you have to do to get that money out is to create a system. I teach the guys how to do a very quick, easy to do newsletter that works. Send that out once a week just to keep front of mind, give them some value, and those people will show up more. And that's just one example of a database. The other mistake I think that founders or anyone makes is that they put the whole updating of the database onto the recruiter, and that's never going to be a good outcome. And if it's a founder, it's even worse because they don't have time. And I always advocate for getting and increasingly it's going to be AI, but now I still think that a VA is better, because I think the data is more accurate. You probably speak to that better than I could, Sean. But if you've got somebody and you pay them, let's just say it's, I don't know, $500 a month to come in for half a week or something, and just literally go through and update your data, that one little thing is going to help you without doing anything else. Thousands to your bottom line every year. The other thing, and again, you'll know this better than me, is, as I understand it, a lot of the AI tools that are automatically updating data will pull from LinkedIn. Well, we know that for a lot of jobs, the LinkedIn data is not correct. We as recruiters think that everybody's on LinkedIn and it's all perfect. Well, it is if you're a recruiter, because it needs to be. But especially in IT, a lot of people that get hit up all the time by recruiters are actually putting, like, they're not updating it, and they're putting stuff in so that they can't be found. So you're finding that easy to find people on LinkedIn, and when it's pulling data across, it's potentially pulling outdated data in. So I believe your database is so valuable that for me, like $500 a month to have someone come in and actually be responsible for going in so many records a day and updating it for my money is great. And that goes for clients as well.
Yeah, you can, like, in my history, I know that sometimes I look at a database and I'm like, there's so much, not crap data, but there's so much in it that gets so noisy. And then if you have
Yeah.
somebody cleaning up, taking it out, then it becomes that asset, and then it's not going in to try and find a needle in a haystack. It's like you're on top of it, and then lists, like, lists of like your top people. So then when you do have something coming in, it's you've got these updated lists, and if it's $500 for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, that's money well spent. You also mentioned your newsletter there, so I read yours
Thanks.
religiously. It's really it's one of the best I've read. And you talk about the messy middle in some of that, and can you just explain what that is and when you were in it and what was going on for you at the time?
Yeah, I love that term. We've sort of touched on it as well. It's kind of that inflection point when you move from being a recruiter to being an owner. And that's not the right word. You're already an owner, but you come into your business and you operate like a recruiter, and then you start trying to act like a CEO and making these changes in your business. And that's where the messy middle is, when you're still trying to figure it out because you don't know what you don't know, how to grow your business. You weren't sitting in the operations meetings and the marketing meetings and all of that stuff when you worked for an agency. You know what they did. You just know that it kind of outputted and it helped you. You didn't know how you got paid, what
Yeah.
compliance was there, what you didn't sit in front of demos every day. And then all of a sudden you're doing all this stuff. You're sitting in front of demos. You're trying to figure out tech, pick up the kids from in between picking up the kids from school and all this sort of. So that's the messy middle. Before you've kind of figured out how to start to work on projects step by step, one at a time, that are going to help you grow. So for example, we talked about the website before. The messy middle is probably not when you not when you're chaotic, but the messy middle is the time to start thinking about those things and going and getting the resources and the learning and the stuff that you need to push through that one bottleneck at a time.
And look, thinking back to when you started out, is there anything that's changed maybe what you initially believed in, and compared to today? Because we've went through so much change, like, the pandemic, AI, all this stuff. Is there anything that's changed for you in terms of day one and what you believed in and to now?
I think it's two things. I think one, and more so now, I think one, we need to realize that things are always changing. It's never done. It's a journey. Often people say, oh, I want to create this, I want to do that. But every day, every day, every day is part of it. It's a live breathing thing. And I always kind of, when I started, I was like, one day when I get to there, one day when I get to there, but there is no there. Here's the journey. And sure, you're going to have goals along the way, but as soon as you hit those, there's going to be a whole lot of set of new ones. So that's the first thing. But the big thing is that business doesn't have to be hard. We make it so hard for ourselves. And we make it so hard for ourselves for all the wrong reasons. We're trying to save money. We make decisions based on what we think, but often not on what is actually right. We think
And
we're doing the right thing, and there's a ton of learning, and we all, we're learning every day. But if we could bring that learning forward and that understanding forward, business doesn't have to be hard. I finally figured it out. It took me ages.
yeah, did you come up with a process or a system to do that? Or
Yeah, it wasn't one system, Sean. It was just basically looking at each part of the business, so this is what I do now. So I look at the bottlenecks in the business and I go, why is that taking time? Why is it sucking up money? Why is it not as effective as it should be? And if I don't know how to do it, I'll go and learn. I still do tons of courses and I'm always learning something. So there might be something that you learn. There might be somebody that need to bring in to fix that process, but it's not usually too hard for people to understand what the problem is that they need to fix. They usually understand that bit, they just don't know how to do it. And so it's identifying those bottlenecks and just jumping on them and creating projects around them to um, just to get them working properly for you one at a time. And I guess the other thing that's rolled up in that is you can't do everything at once. You can't look at your business and like everyone says, oh, I need you that, I need you that, and I need you that. Nothing happens. Just pick one project, we do 6 week sprints in the Scale project, do a 6 week sprint on that project, get that done, move on. And it doesn't have to be hard. It can be really enjoyable if you know what you're doing, you're getting the right advice. And if you are getting overwhelmed, just to step back.
I'm sure you see a lot of burnout, like people coming to you and they're about to, I don't know if it's, do you give up or do you keep going? And when I've experienced myself as well, when you get to that point where you're like, you need to push on, but you're nearly drained. Do you see that? Is there any advice you give to people, or do you have to sign
Yeah.
up for that?
Yeah, I see it. I see it more often than I'd like to see it. And it's usually because people are doing the same stuff thinking that they'll get a different result. And they'll dig their heels in and they'll just keep going. Or the opposite is they'll take on a whole lot of stuff that they don't really know what they're doing, and then that just adds fuel to the fire. And the big one is not delegating, which we've spoken a lot about already. They're not ready to let stuff go. And because what happens is they get so overwhelmed, you can't be creative when you're operating under stress. Your cortisol levels go up and you just can't concentrate. So what I reckon people do, and it sounds counterintuitive, but you've just got to step back and breathe, sit down with a cup of tea, talk to a friend or a mentor or somebody, and just things are never as bad as they seem. It's just in our head. But if we can talk about what, like if I was feeling really overwhelmed and I jumped on the phone to you or Zoom with you, Sean, and said, la, 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 it moves from the part of my brain where I can't figure it out, the executive functioning center. The conversation then helps you start to figure out what's going on. So get on and talk to somebody and talk it through instead of trying to figure it out yourself. The other thing, I sort of came to this realization the other day, I'm like addicted to podcasts. Like I'm always looking for the next best podcast. And I realized the other day, I was like, I have had my earpods in my head all day listening to stuff. Like, and then I wrote, why? I'm going to have a day without them. And then all of a sudden, my brain, my subconscious has been working on all these things that it can fix out in the business and ideas and different things. You know, the shower is the time they all come out for some reason. But I was like, oh, that's because I've just given my brain some space to actually solve the problems it needs to solve. You can't do that while you're being bombarded with other stuff. So it's a long way of saying you've got to give yourself some space and step back, which is really hard because when you're overwhelmed and busy, that's the last thing that you feel like you can do.
But more showers.
More showers, that's it. You can be very clean.
I know someone that I was speaking to, I'm friends with, that some days he might have two showers just because there's problems, and then he gets in and 20 minutes later comes out with a solution. It's an interesting something there.
It's actually been scientifically proven. At one point, you can buy this paper. It's like waterproof paper. And so I was like, right, I'm going to buy some of that and put it in the shower because I always have like, same as your friend.
Yeah,
I'm not your friend, but I mean, I am your friend, but I'm not that friend. And I didn't use it, but I should have. But it was like this waterproof paper. So they've actually got a solution for it. And there's a waterproof pencil, I think, that comes with it. There's a scientific thing. The water somehow stimulates the creativity. Interesting.
interesting. Interesting, really interesting. I love stuff like that. Okay, cool. So if there's people now thinking about going out on their own, we'll all have different answers to this, but what's the one truth that nobody talks about when you're setting up a business that needs to be said, or something that will blindside somebody and then they're hit with it then when they've started and it's like, oh, no one let me know this.
Apart from being responsible about your cash flow, your mortgages, and all that kind of thing, like you've got to make your own assumptions there around how financially set up you are to do it. Because it depends on what sort of personality you are, but it can be super stressful if you start a business and it doesn't kick off like you do. And then all of a sudden you're on the back foot. If you can get a bit of a kitty to, that's a good thing. But the main thing that I would say to be ready for is what we talked about is in the beginning, it'll be fun, it'll be amazing. And that's awesome. That's to be celebrated for sure. But I think to understand that if you do want to scale and grow, there's going to be a lot of stuff that sits outside the recruiting function that you probably don't know a lot of yet. You need to really find out what's coming down the road, not to scare you, but just so you can be prepared. I mean, it's exciting. That was the thing I loved about growing my business, was learning all those things I didn't know outside of recruitment. That to me was really exciting. So I guess instead of being afraid of it, just be aware that it's coming and talk to people who've been there and find out what their journeys were. And if you don't know how to do something, for God's sake, ask somebody. There'll be plenty of people. There's lots of people like me and others in the industry that have been there. We're more than happy to pay it forward and help out where we can. So that would be my other piece of advice.
It's a really good one. I look back at the start and, taxes, BAS, like, and all the financial IQ, and it was just, I didn't know where to go, where to look. And when you do ask somebody that's been through it, you get a real answer. It's not somebody coming going like, this is what you do, but it's like they'll tell you their stories, and then it opens up to partnerships and everything. Is there any blind spots that maybe you've had as well that you don't mind sharing, and what were they, and what was that look like if you were telling somebody to day one, what would you be saying to them?
Yeah, one of them, Sean, I would say there's a right time to be doing different things in your business. So the website's a good example.
Mm.
What do you need to be doing today? At some point, you need to have a really good website, but is it today? At some point, you need to hire somebody, but is it today? And I think we need to be really careful about getting things in the right order and getting those priorities right. And that's what people who've been there before you can help you with. And I don't know if this is such a blind spot. It's kind of just a more of a great thing to do is get into a peer community. Because like you said, it's great to be around like-minded people and in a community. Don't just sit, because so many people work from home now. Don't just sit in your office at home and not get out and press the flesh with others. Like, we caught up first time face to face a few weeks ago, and it's lovely. You just get that different perspective. So another blind spot I think would be is that we forget sometimes that people want a life outside of Zoom. So get out there, meet people, speak to people, have some fun out and about instead of just being locked away trying to get that next placement on the board.
Exactly. It's less transactional. When I seen you, it was great to kind of just have a chat in person, and the whole conversation changes. Like it's a
Yeah.
different. We're not jumping in a call to talk about this one thing, and then you're away, because that's kind of what happens now. And videos are great. It makes you can do this, and you can all over the world, not a problem. But when you are in person, and it's something that I probably shied away for about a year or two when I was after COVID and stuff. But getting out and doing the events, and it's just in the conversation you get to understand people. Maybe somebody that you look at online as different personality than you actually assumed, or it was very business related, and then you get in, you have a beer or something, and it goes off into a different relationship really as well.
Yeah.
So no, it was really good to see you.
Likewise. I mean, we're designed for 3D, not 2D. Actually, I was listening to another podcast the other day, Rich Roll. I listened to him a bit, and he was interviewing a lady. I can't remember her name, but she mentioned during the podcast that, I don't know, I think it was Harvard University. You've actually got a division set up doing all this research on Zoom. And one of the things that she said that struck me was we sit there and we look at Zoom and we look at ourselves all day because we're part of that. And she said we're actually not designed to look at ourselves that long. It's not good for, I don't know why, but apparently it's just not good for our psychology, which I
Yeah.
kind of thought that's because I always try and look at, I try and not look at myself. Sounds so vain. I try to look at the person on Zoom, and now even more so because I thought, oh, that's really interesting what she was saying. Then that the fact that they've got this whole division set up, I thought was kind of telling as
Yeah,
well.
I think we evolved it to MERS. I'm saying shower and MER, two words that I can't get out because of my accent. But I did read something similar about that, where when we're looking at it from our existence, and then you're seeing yourself in a mirror or you're on video every day, it does. I'm not sure if we're meant to be doing that all day, but it's interesting. You must listen to so many podcasts, and it's good. I think also listening to different podcasts, maybe outside of your day to day, it gives you different perspectives as well.
I get a bit obsessed. I was talking to Andrew Roger yesterday. We were talking about podcasts. And he goes, "Oh, BK, I'm getting a bit obsessed with the podcast." I was like, "I've got the same problem. I just get so I just love learning and soaking stuff in." And I've been listening to Steve Bartlett a lot, the Diary of the CEO. He interviews some really interesting people. He interviewed one of the founders of AI the other day, a gentleman, I can't remember his name. That was an interesting conversation. And that he started like way back in the 50s when they were, just sort of starting to plant the idea and start to do things. And he asked him the question, if you had your time over, would you do it all again? And I think I'm saying this right. I'm pretty sure he said, not if I knew where I think it's heading now. So I was like, oh. So, there's some really interesting people to listen to on worldviews, and, there's a lot more going on in the world than recruitment.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Cool. Look, I really would advise anybody to follow your newsletter.
Thank
And
you.
just if anybody is listening to this and got something from it, please do reach out to Belinda. But Belinda, next time you're in Sydney, or if I'm up your way, we'll have to catch up. But really
For
appreciate
sure.
coming on today, and it was great to have yourself as the rebirth of this. So no, I really appreciate it, and thanks for sharing.
My absolute pleasure. I hope there's some value there for your listeners.
Brilliant. That was great.